Hi everyone. I want to talk about anti-obesity drugs today. Seems like a bit of a strange topic for me, but nevertheless I came across this article where the article was starting to promote these anti-obesity drugs for young children, even up to from 6 to 12. The drug companies are starting to push for the professionals to take it, to prescribe it to the children. And it seems like a good idea to a lot of pediatricians. Easy way to go. Just give the child another drug. In fact, this is an injection which the child has to take every day to bring their obesity under control. It obviously disturbs me. I mean, to give an obese child an injection every day in order for them to lose their weight seems like, I mean, when we're starting to see children on drugs, it becomes kind of habitual, Oh, I've got this problem, let me take a drug. I'm depressed, let me take an antidepressant. I've got cholesterol, let me take a statin. So, I mean, I can understand that there's a place for drugs, but is this the approach we should be taking? That in children we should be giving anti-obesity drugs? The thing is that in this particular study, they showed that in young children, the weight did go down. But listen to this. 12% experienced a serious adverse event, and 11% discontinued treatment due to side effects. So that's a problem, isn't it? Always with drugs. And why is that so? Because drugs work at a very, very superficial level. I mean, the assumption that a human being is a bag of biochemistry and anatomy is totally wrong. We, as I keep pointing out over and over again, we are not biochemistry. Biochemistry moves much too slow to be in control of the whole system. We need something that moves fast. Biochemistry moves at centimeters a second. Light energy moves at 300,000 kilometers a second. It's a different ball game altogether. So the controls have to be at the level of energy and information. Can't be at the level of chemistry and physiology. So when we're starting to interfere with a biochemical process at such a superficial level, we have no idea the repercussions. We have no idea what's really going on. We're looking at it from a very narrow perspective. This particular group of medications block a physiological process that has to do with eating and the way insulin is secreted. So there's a hormone that is secreted by the intestinal tract when you eat. And that particular hormone has a whole range of physiological effects. So it also changes your appetite, because as you keep eating, slowly your sense of appetite goes down as well. So this hormone has major effects on the body, controls blood sugar, and all kinds of physiological effects. So the drug interferes right at that place. It interferes with the body's natural, hormonal, physiological effects around eating. And you can interfere with that process. The trouble is, as I keep pointing out over and over again, that when you interfere with a physiological process, well, the body has its own ideas how it needs to control and balance the system. And so when you're interfering with the control mechanisms, the body has to adjust and adapt. And that in that adjustment and adaptation, there's often major side effects. I mean, 12% experienced a serious adverse event. That's a lot. So the trouble is that this happened the study was done over a year, 56 weeks. So they didn't go on for longer than that. They only did it for a year. Now you're giving a child of 6 years a drug to control their obesity. And obviously the expectation will be, because for the moment you stop the drug, if nothing else changes, your weight goes up again. So now you're going to give this child, 6 years old, a drug which they're going to have to take for a long term. And we have no idea yet if it's addicting, how easy it is to stop a drug when you've been taking it for a long period of time. And the more serious problem for me is not the serious adverse events that happen within the space of a year, but what happens to the low-grade symptoms and signs. I mean, they're very common to have a bit of nausea, a bit of sometimes vomiting, diarrhea, constipation. These are common symptoms. Some bloating and reflux. Nearly always, I'm sure, that when the child comes back with nausea, a bit of vomiting, the doctor will not stop the drug, but will give them another drug. That's what always happens. So that's why people end up with so many drugs. So because very often 20-25% of the drugs they're getting are to deal with the side effects of the other drugs that they're getting. So that's the problem. So my concern is not the serious problems that come up quickly within a space of a year that forces the person either to stop the drug or the pediatrician or doctor to stop the drug, is the slow grade symptoms that often people become accustomed to. Oh, I've got a little bit of nausea, and you live with it because it's not constant. It comes and goes. And when you're a bit nauseous, your appetite goes down, so that's okay too. So people live with these mild symptoms and signs. They take other medication to deal with it. Even they might take some ginger tea or something like that, for example, for the low-grade nausea. But the trouble is, one has to remember that if you've got symptoms and signs from a drug, you're being poisoned. That's a poison effect. It's not a physiological, natural effect. If you take a chemical that blocks a physiological process and you have symptoms and signs, those are symptoms and signs of poisoning. I mean, what else is poisoning? So one has to be so careful with the recognition of what's happening here. So I am not against drugs at all. I think that there's a really important place for drugs. But we do need to be wise around it. And is it okay for children to be taking drugs? I mean, if I look here, I see that in the study, it says here that the American Academy of Pediatrics issued recommendations that obesity drugs may be considered for kids 12 and older with obesity. But the United States Preventive Service Task Force concluded that existing evidence was inadequate to recommend obesity drugs for children and adolescents, citing the small number of studies and limited data on long-term treatment. Now, that's a wise decision. So how come the American Academy of Pediatrics recommended it for children 12 years and older? Because they are run by pediatricians, and pediatricians, by their nature, are drug pushers. They like drugs. And if they get symptomatic improvement, then they're happy. Whereas the United States Preventive Services Task Force is different. Their vision is different. And so they're suggesting that there are other ways to go first. And that's true. That's my recommendation too. That children that are overweight, it's not just a question of decreasing their intake of calories. It's a question of giving them appropriate food. And there are lots of them. There's the low-fat diet, there's the plant-based diet, there's the Mediterranean diet, there's intermittent fasting. There are many approaches. They all work. So it's not that there's one particular diet. All the diets will work. It depends how you carry them out. And it depends on the discipline that one tends to have. So choose a diet that works for the child and works for the adult. There's always a diet that will work. So find out the one that works. And of course, keep away from junk food, because that's what's causing the problem of obesity most of the time, is using junk food that is full of simple carbohydrates and refined carbohydrates, and a whole range of toxins as well. And those toxins interfere with function. So choose foods that are healthy, choose that are natural and not junk. There are lots of other additions that one can take. Lemon, verbena, and hibiscus, the mixture together is supposed to help a lot for weight reduction. Saffron, green tea, gynostemia, L-carnitine, probiotics, all of them can make a difference. Why are they not comparing a drug to what I've just mentioned now? Because it doesn't work. It's pharmaceutical companies that are driving this particular research. So it tends to be one-sided. And there are many other approaches that should be tried. I certainly don't recommend children taking these anti-obesity drugs. As I keep saying, they're working at a physiological level. So it's a little bit like statins. Statins also work by blocking a physiological process. And when you block a physiological process, we don't know what the downstream effects are. So, yeah. So please think twice about giving your children anti-obesity drugs or even taking them yourself. There are much more appropriate approaches first. Drugs are only, at the bottom end of the list for me, or under very special circumstances. Have a good day.